Sure, sure. So everybody, my name's Vic Walker. I am the membership manager at the Chamber. Deal with obviously businesses in town that want to join. So thank you for joining us this evening for what we usually call business education series, but Randy also works, as he said, for the Entrepreneurship Center, and it was a great partnership that we're trying to put together to bring learning opportunities basically out to people in town, since we're probably going to be stuck at home anyway. Why not, take advantage of the opportunity and learn a little something. So thanks for joining us tonight. Kind of before we get started, I think a big thing, obviously we've been talking about a little bit, is we're getting shut down a little bit. We're going to be pushing out a big shop local push this year for the holidays. It's a great thing if you can get out and do something for these local businesses, restaurants and stuff. Do your part and shop local. So that's all we got to say, because it's gonna be a rough winter, I think. So anyway, without further ado, Randy, take it away.
I'm going to share my screen here. Is any limitations to that right now, Vic?
No. Let me make sure. Should be able to now. And while Randy's doing that, if anybody has any questions or anything, if you raise your hand or send anything in chat, I'll see it. Of course, you can always speak up. Randy will hear you as well. So
can you see that screen?
Yep.
All right. Thanks for participating tonight. This will be the small group of us. Plenty of room for questions and dialogue, so feel free to engage, talk about your specific situations. And this I look at as kind of a prelude to getting together either via Zoom or phone call and talking through some of these questions. The whole idea of tonight's seminar is to raise a bunch of questions with you regarding all the stuff you need to do to get a decent start going, okay? Legally, organizationally, understanding your customers, doing some budgeting and forecasting. We're going to touch on all the basics tonight so that if you are moving forward with your business, you make better plan, okay? I also periodically do want to writing a business plan. That's not tonight, although we can certainly help you with that too. And I have great slideshows I'm happy to send you, and then we can back it up with a conversation after you get the PowerPoint. Little bit of introduction here. My name is Randy Berdasius. I work for Colorado Mountain College, and I coordinate a group called Yampa Valley SCORE. SCORE is the volunteer arm of the U.S. Small Business Administration. We provide free business counseling that's confidential to anybody that wants it. In Steamboat, we have a very entrepreneurial economy. I checked a few years back, and 90% of our incorporated businesses and LLCs were less than 10 people. So, we don't have a lot of big industry here. Ski Corp is one. There's a couple of other organizations and government. That's it. Otherwise, it's generally small businesses. So we've been doing this for quite some time, 20 years. I've been the director for 14 years. My background before running this show would be to run a regional employee staffing company in Indiana. I did that for a number of years. It was a business my father started, and I ran it for that business there 13 years. We made some money, and it allowed me to buy a house out here. And then we sold that company in 2005. Early in my career, I worked for Hewlett-Packard, back when computers cost a boatload, and took up the better part of a room. We leased those computers. And for most of my 10 years at Hewlett-Packard, I was either the finance leasing sales rep or the manager of the department. I spent 2 years and as a sales admin manager for an area headquarters too, but most of my time I spent in leasing and contract administration for Hewlett-Packard. I went to Colorado State for my undergraduate, and I have an MBA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So that's my background. In a minute, I'm going to ask you for a brief introduction of yourself too. Before we get going, the Yampa Valley Entrepreneurship Center is two things. We are a business support network providing counseling and workshops and seminars or educational content for entrepreneurs and small business owners in the community. Number two, I manage a small incubator that CMC runs. Right now, as of Labor Day, that incubator is at the Honey Stinger headquarters at the Steamboat Springs Private General Aviation Airport. We have 1,500 square feet. We rent out 4 offices and 7 cubicles, and that is partly revenue. It's also partly a place where somebody that needs a little help and doesn't want to kind of sign their life away in a long-term lease can get started with a new business. So, when the COVID calms down, if anybody wants a tour of that space, please let me know. I'm happy to show folks around. We have 8 other counselors in the Steamboat Springs area, all with a great skill set. So if I'm not the right fit, usually I'll set you up on a sort of a date with that other person, and they can help you with your challenges, planning, problems, marketing, finance, whatever it is. Various people have different skill sets, and I try to match people up with the skill set they need to move forward. So I'd like briefly for Joe, why don't you start out? What are you thinking about doing?
One second. There we go. Good evening, everyone. Right now, my wife and I are looking at starting a, what was it called? A storage facility. It just seems like, we're looking at building a long-term asset. So something that we can kind of like put together now and then slowly work into it and then build off it later on in life, more or less when we get towards retirement, so we can kind of set up and relax instead of, you're 55 and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to retire soon. What am I supposed to do? And you kind of look back and realize you didn't actually save as much money as you had planned. So we're kind of looking at that. My background is actually, I grew up in Minnesota, received my culinary degree there, and then I moved to Napa, California, and worked in several restaurants there. So I've been in the culinary field for about 25 years. I recently, 2 years ago, switched over to the maintenance department at Colorado Mountain College. My wife and I had kids, so we kind of had to slow down and then kind of start planning on a different path. And let's see. Yeah, that should be about everything.
Thanks, Joe.
Of course.
Brianna, are you there? Why don't you give a quick introduction?
Hey, I'm Bree.
Sorry, Bree. Sorry.
No, that's okay. My dog is squeaking, so if you hear a weird noise, that's what that is. I have a business that is, basically an e-commerce, but I do custom like art and apparel, jewelry, and home decor. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of working on growing my audience and, creating a thriving online store.
Thank you very much. Trevin, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Trevin Newford, and I've been in Steamboat Springs since 2007-8 in the winter months, and then year-round about 8 years now. Worked up at the ski area for much of that time, managing the bike park, working within a management role up there in the operations of that corporation. But with things going on and some changes in place, looking at trying my hand at a delivery rental service with some sports equipment, specifically for this winter, and going through the hoops right now of establishing that business, trying to check off some boxes and see how viable it is. And insurance right now is the big hurdle.
I understand. I can put you in touch with some people that might be able to help after the call. So you might drop me a phone call or an email tomorrow. Okay.
Sounds good.
And then Frederica, I saw you joined. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Good to see you, Randy. I'm Frederica Manning, and I work over at Sports Med at the hospital. And my boyfriend and I have just finalized it this week, the Amazing Steamboat. That's a miniature golf course in Mays that's behind the chamber. And so he's been running it and opened it and built it since the beginning. But as primary business owners now, this is all new to us. So I'm just trying to learn as much as I can so we can try to make a successful business and do a lot of it ourselves without having to outsource
Or
for,
higher, yeah.
yeah,
So are we going to do extreme winter miniature golf?
maybe.
All right. Yeah. All right. Is anybody else joined that I don't know about out there?
No, that
Okay.
seems to be it. And I want to say hi, Fred. You helped me with my shoulder. I just had surgery last week, so thank you.
I was going to say it looked familiar.
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
So, sounds good. I'm going to move through the next slide here then. Thanks for the introductions. You probably all have my contact information, but it's there. First initial, last name at CMC, and my phone number is 819-2016. Please feel free to contact me after this if you'd like to continue the discussion. We did the introductions. We're going to touch on the following things: understanding the marketplace, revenue forecasting. Spreadsheets are a key part of this whole process. Identifying cost for your business. We're going to talk about getting money, whether it be through investors or lenders. And then we're going to kind of touch on, hey, when do you make the decision to pull the cord and move forward with this, or sit in the background and wait for a better time? And this workshop is kind of built on a lot of questions, and it's your duty to answer these questions to the best of your ability. A few of these may not apply to everyone, but most of them will. And if you can't answer all of them, that's okay too, but you should be able to answer most of them, or at least come up with some assumptions and get closer to an understanding of what you need to do to take money out of people's wallets. That's the whole goal, is to provide a service, provide value to other people that they're willing to pay for. So we're going to go through a lot of questions here. Again, if you feel like you want to step aside and ask something with a small audience like this, I don't think that'll be a problem. First question is, what products will I offer? What brands will I carry? What services will I provide? And this is specific. It's not general, but what specifically will I be providing my customers that they're willing to pay for? Okay, so we want to be articulate or detailed in saying what we're willing to sell to people, and what they should pay for it. Are these products already there? Are you doing something new in the community? Or in our community, can be local, regional, or national, or even international with the internet. Are you creating a new niche, something that is unique and different? Or are you going to compete on customer service, follow through, prices perhaps? Maybe you think you can do it cheaper than somebody else. But we're trying to look at the competition here and find out key differences that allow us to create a path forward without bumping heads with all the people on Lincoln Avenue, either side, that are doing this or that. Will my products and services be different than existing products or services? What's unique about it? What differentiates it from something else that's already out there, either on the internet or in person? There should be something that you can paint a picture for clients, customers, that lets them get intrigued by it, because it's not just another offering that's out there. What, for something like a miniature golf experience, what is unique about this particular course that another one doesn't have? Convenience, location, that could be part of it, but maybe there's something else we can offer that makes it kind of pretty cool. How will I deliver my products to the marketplace? Will you have a truck and take it out to somebody? Will people come to you? Will there be a retail presence? Or is this all online? Bree is looking at an online presence. That's cool, and that's the way many new businesses are starting nowadays, if not most, actually. But we need to define the delivery mechanism, and that does include shipping too, if online is the path you're going. There's several different options out there for shipping. You want to make sure you investigate those very well, understand the pros and cons of each of those, price versus delivery, guarantees versus no guarantees. What will my customer tolerate if that package is a week late? Or will they not tolerate it? The next question is labor skills. Most of what you're doing here looks to be fairly minimal in terms of labor needs, but we do routinely have shortages of skilled labor in our community. So you want to make sure before you move too far down that path that what you do need to run the business is available. And this does not necessarily mean just employees. It can mean contractors. You may need people to create a website for you. You may need people to write code for your business. An e-commerce site might be appropriate for Bree. If you're going to be doing rental delivery, sports rental delivery, some kind of application software probably would be pretty nice there too. Something where you can actually show pictures and allow people to click on it, enter their credit card information, enter the delivery variables, and get that stuff out there day after tomorrow, wherever, when they get to town in 2 weeks, whatever it is. So, these things, particularly the software skills, aren't necessarily available here. And many times they will be cheaper if you get them online through a website like guru.com or some other tool where people find skilled labor on a contract basis to fill particular jobs. And there's a handful of those sites out there. Will you need any special equipment or raw materials to run my business? We have basic materials in Steamboat, obviously office equipment, but if, raw materials, we don't have. And there's a reason there's not a lot of manufacturing here. It's because it's expensive to ship stuff here to make other things. Think about what we do sell here. Sleeping bags at Big Agnes, titanium bikes at Moots. These are all lightweight things. There's very little heavyweight stuff being made. Even our lumber gets shipped out. Lumber and cattle is the only heavy stuff we have, and it all gets shipped out for manufacturing. What price point will align with your perceived customer value? People are willing to pay so much for stuff. They won't go over that, or they'll just try to find it online or not buy it. And it also really is a factor in who your customers are and what they can afford. If you're selling your stuff to locals, the price point's probably lower than if you're selling to tourists or second homeowners, part-time residents. So thinking about the economic resources of your audience is an important part of determining price and also determining whether you're creating value for that customer. So this is the first slide, is defining your products and services, and these 7 questions will help you do that in a good fashion. You got to know who your customer is before you can really pinpoint their needs, okay? It's one thing to say, I sell to everybody, but really, even water is differentiated between Fiji water and, Safeway bottled water. So there is a demographic for all things, and you should define the demographic that you're targeting. That may be age-related. I'm in my early 60s. I'm going to have a different set of tastes and interests than most of you will. It could be my gender. It could be my education, the fact that I have kids. Families have different interests than single people do. It often is a variable based on income too. You can buy an array of ski equipment from $300 to $1,000, and those are often based on the income level of the people coming to the community. And prices and products are targeted to people with different levels of income. Usually that's related to quality, but not always. Sometimes it's just the marketing and the graphics and the positioning of the product out there. Years ago, I bought my wife a ski jacket from Obermeyer. I think it was based in Aspen, and it was a pretty jacket, lovely and very expensive, but it fell apart in 2 years. So I'm not sure that quality necessarily is always a determining factor of price. So the first question is about describe your customer in detail. The next question is, why will they buy my products? There is an emotional reason for everything we do. Everything starts with the heart. Okay. So what emotion does your product trigger in someone? You all know the basic emotions of life. Comfort, hunger can be one, a need, the sense for community, neighborhood. Fear can be something, safety, social status, being part of a tribe, if you will. We all buy stuff for a reason. So what is the reason your stuff is going to sell? Your stuff or service is going to sell to somebody, okay? So this will also help define how you market your product to people. If you know what the trigger points are for a decision, you can answer those questions in advance of the customer so they don't have to think about it or worry about it. They can say, that's what I need. That's exactly what I've been thinking about doing. I need more storage. I need to clean out these bedrooms in the back, or I need to thin out my garage so I can use it for summer storage, something like that. So there's always reasons people do things. What is the reason for your customers to do what they do? Has anybody ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? It's a thing, it's a pyramid. On the bottom is like the basics: warmth, food, rest. It's physiological needs, the basic things we need to survive. The next step up is safety needs, security, not having fear in your life. That's kind of an issue right now, right? The next step up on that pyramid is belonging, sense of love, relations, family, partners. The next step up is esteem and prestige, the feeling of pride in what you've done, feeling of satisfaction in getting something important out of your life, out of your job, out of your family, out of your home. And finally, the top step on this pyramid is called self-actualization. You've reached your full potential. I don't know how many of us get there, and some of us may get there and then fall back out of that, but when you do it, you feel fulfilled and rich in the life you've lived. And if your products can somehow or other meet the higher level needs on this pyramid of emotions, it's easier to sell because people feel more results, more satisfaction in buying that value that you're providing. The next question is, how often will they buy? Will they buy it daily? I mean, we buy groceries. My wife and I about twice a week. Every 7 or 8 years, you might buy a vehicle. You may be a new computer every 3 years, a new phone every 5 to 7 years. Whatever the pattern is, every product, every service has a purchase pattern. Define the purchase pattern for what you're doing. Will people come back and do that more? Can you sell punch cards, for example, for the miniature golf so that you can provide the incentive for families to do this 6 times a summer instead of once or twice a summer? These kind of patterns and encouraging people to repeat these patterns can increase your sales and revenue. And you want to try to maximize those patterns and get people to buy as much as they can of your stuff. How often will they buy? Pardon me, that same question. How many potential customers are in the marketplace? We'll talk about that in the next slide on demographics before I move on. Are the population and demographic trends in our community? This is important. We know Steamboat's growing, but is it growing with the kind of people that will buy your stuff or services? Okay. People are coming here from all over the country, particularly this year with COVID. They're trying to get out of their cities. They now know they can work remotely and still get a decent income. So we're seeing a new bunch of people come to town. Are they people that are consistent with the demographic you need to sell your things? Or if you're all online and national, that's not quite as big a question because it's a national population you're looking at. And then you're tending to look at whether age patterns are growing or declining, okay? If you're selling to my generation, we have a very large number of people out there, but we are in decline. We're getting older and some of us are dropping off the planet. If you're selling to millennials, there's a very large population of millennials out there and they can be a great marketplace. Generation Z, the high school kids are a little smaller in terms of numbers, but nonetheless can be a very good marketplace if you have a product that meets their needs. Also, every generation has some biases in favor of or against certain kinds of products and interests. And be aware of those changing biases and tastes. Do you fit within that bias? If you want to sell to that marketplace, you need to be consistent with at least the popular range that bias has. Finally, and last but not necessarily least, is the internet a good source of customers? Yes, yes, and yes. If you don't sell on the internet, then people find you on the internet. So it's almost impossible now to make a statement business unless you have a fairly good internet presence out there. Even if it's just an online brochure and some links so that people can find you, or you pay some money for some search engine optimization. So when people Google something that's relatively close to what you do, your name, your business comes up. Do you have references and reviews on your site? Are you able to do e-commerce? Free e-commerce is much more expensive to set up, but it's a much easier way to facilitate a transaction. Also, Trevin, leasing equipment, if you can do that online, take the payment online and get that all processed, it's a much easier way to do things. And Trevin, you don't have to process sales tax. Bree would have to set up the software to handle sales tax, which is far more complex. But there are packages out there that allow you to do that. Any questions about defining our customer before I move on? Okay. I'm talking really fast, so tell me to slow down if I get too out of whack here. So knowing about the marketplace is understanding the basics of demographics. Again, the census will tell us a lot about our community. Right now, our census is dated. There's been some periodic updates over the last 10 years, but generally every 10 years, and 2020 was the year, it gets a major upgrade as we do a national census. And all these stats are fed in, and sometime next year, that data will be available for you to peruse based on zip codes. So you can put 80487 in there and learn a lot about our community. There's tons of search capabilities, so you can see, shucks, age, kids, income, number of businesses out there. It's almost overwhelming how much data the census provides to us. And it's a great research tool for key information to help you understand whether there's enough people out there that fit the profile of your customer. There's several paid sites as well, bizstats.com. There's a couple of Reference USA. I think they changed their name, but these are great sites where if you subscribe to them, you can pull up much more detailed packaged information that fits the needs of specific customers. And to do this, go down to your library reference librarian. They are the most underutilized small business resource in this community. If you want to learn about an industry, if you want to learn about our community and how it's built and what it looks like, reference librarian can help you with that. Plus, they have subscriptions to many of these cool databases I just mentioned, so you haven't got to go buy one. You will need to get a library card, but they're free. Just take a little bit of information to get your library card. And if you don't have one, you should have one anyhow, because they have tons of free stuff there. Movies, books, all that kind of stuff that save you a lot of money. You can learn a lot about our community through the Cities of Steamboat's website. It's steamboatsprings.net, N-E-T. All of our sales tax data for many years in the past is listed there. And it's broken down by 7 or 8 key industries. And it will show you all the ebbs and flows of sales based on recessions, based on seasonal sales patterns in different industries. It's a great resource for understanding how our community works. This really matters because our primary tax, not primary, almost all of our tax revenue in the city of Steamboat comes from sales tax. We don't have a city property tax, okay? There's a fire department tax, CMC has a property tax, a couple small ones, but the city itself doesn't get any money for property tax. So they keep a pretty good eye on this number, and all that data is published for you to see under the finance page on the city website. Many of the businesses you're going into, for example, miniature golf, I'm sure, as well as storage, have trade associations. Joining these things is often very inexpensive. They have tons of research within their own profession about the industry they're going into, trends that matter to you, changes that are occurring that you need to be aware of before you go too deep down this path. So think about looking up the trade association that you're following, that in the industry you're going into, and joining it. Get knowledgeable on what you want to do. You can find you can buy a package of addresses for the whole community. So if you want to do a mailer across particular neighborhoods or across the county or across the city, public records are available to extract every mailing address for every homeowner in this county, and it's free. Okay, so public records are a great place to find information on our community. I think before I even moved here full time, I was getting mailers in Indiana for local organizations, and they must have found me on public records because I didn't have a mailing address in Steamboat Springs. Guerrilla research, that's going out and learning about others that are doing something similar as you. Scouting the competition. Talking to similar business owners in different towns, a different retailer that might fit something close to what Bree's doing. Surveying the preferences of customers or potential customers. Put together a survey in SurveyMonkey or Constant Contact, send it out to 100 friends or associates and people on your database and see what they think about your idea and whether that can be fine-tuned in a different way to satisfy more people. It's not uncommon for us to have biases in favor of our own ideas. And it's not uncommon for us to make decisions that say, well, my friends tell me this is a great idea. And you moving forward with an idea that really they weren't being truthful because they were being more kind and friendly than they were being truthful. So a blind survey with good feedback can be a good way to get real results that matter, that show you unbiased, unfettered opinions of products and services you want to offer and the way you want to do business. So think about that too. Questions? Most of us have competition in something we do. Who are the people that compete with us and where are they? Internet? In town? A miniature golf course has a lot of competition. It's other stuff to do. Could be floating the river. People come here, they want to do 5 or 8 things in a week. So you have a lot of competition. So you want to provide a good summary of why this is a break from some of those things and why it's a way to augment your week. Add this to it to have a full, complete week in Steamboat. Okay. Many people will do a simple worksheet with pros and cons of each competitor. What are their rates? Are they more expensive or less expensive? Do they have better customer service? Do they have a better website or a weaker website? Do they answer the phone or not? Do they have good references? There's a lot of things out there when you go to a provider, a store, a website. There's many options for evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of the people you're looking to do business with. Another thing you could do is go to Google your competitors and see whether, go to some of the surveys and feedback arms and make sure that there's not too many complaints out there. It's slipping my mind right now, but what is the one we go to for restaurants and anything? Anybody want to help me out there?
Yelp.
Yeah, thank you. That was the one. That's what I was thinking about. Go look at similar businesses to what you want to do and see whether those are people, their customers are happy or not. Will I be creating a new market or taking business away from existing competitors to gain sales? Are you really creative and new to what you're doing, or are you just trying to spread the pie? If you built a new pizza place in Steamboat and you're selling new pies, you're probably going to take sales from other pizza places, unless it's a totally different kind of product and you're going to bring more people into the marketplace. Okay. Liquor stores, same thing, kind of old school retail. Another one opens up, they may get a chunk of business, but it's probably going to come from other liquor stores. Whereas if you're selling a new product or service, something that hasn't been done before, you may create a new market and generate new sales. Okay, so try to define that, where these people are coming from. Are you pulling them out of the woodwork, or are they already there and you're taking them from Joe or Julie? Will remote competitors, including the internet, be a factor in my business? They are by default. Okay, I'm not sure as much about the two of the businesses here tonight. Storage is really not an internet-based business. Neither is miniature golf. But you need good websites. You need good information so that people can find you and answer routine questions before they pick up the phone or come out and visit. Okay, but even a roofer, the least internet savvy business in the world, still needs to have a good website. They still need to keep that thing up to date and show contemporary references. They need to be able to explain pricing and strategies. They need to talk about quality. The key thing about the internet is it really has an impact on your pricing for most businesses. It forces everybody to be competitive, because most of us now will go out and do a search for something we want. And if we can find it on the internet for cheaper than it is, we're probably going to buy it. Now, there's a lot of us, and I'm a very active in the chamber, that believe buying local makes our whole community better for a wide variety of reasons, including helping your neighbors. But nonetheless, there's only so much we will go that way. Okay, so when you price products, if you're selling products online, you need to be competitive. And a good way to show others you're competitive is on the internet, the way you build your pricing model. You need a website. You know, all these things that matter in competition is the quality of the website, the phone greetings, the responsiveness, your online reviews, the contemporary feel, the way you treat people when they talk to you. Customer service still matters, particularly in a small town. You can really screw it up quick by not treating people kindly in this town. Once you know who your customers are, you try to figure out how to reach them. One of the bigger challenges I've seen amongst small businesses is you have good stuff, you have a good idea, you have a good value proposition. Services, products work, but you don't tell anybody about it. So really nobody comes to you because your customer outreach is minimal or bad. So understanding how to reach customers, how to create curiosity about what you're doing, how to maybe create initiative to move forward and push the button or come to your place of business needs to occur. And most small business owners, entrepreneurs, underestimate the cost of getting customers to come to their door or their website. Okay. Some of the key questions we want to answer is, how do they know I'm here? Word of mouth seldom gets you enough new business to prosper. If you've been around for years, you're an established local, you're involved in the community, that might work. But if you're new, it's rarely gonna work, okay? So we need to think about a real strategy to find people and make them aware of your products and services. Questions: do you need a storefront, or can I operate out of your home or truck for that matter? What time of day will customers shop my business? If you're online, like me, when I go online, I'm usually doing it in the evening because I don't do it much at work unless it's work related or I have a very urgent situation I need to fulfill, okay? If it's outside in the community, it's going to tend to be more traditional business hours. I am always concerned when I see someone downtown closing at 7, because many times the best time to sell something downtown is after people have had dinner and a drink or two. They're much more likely to open up the wallet and put their credit card out. These are retail type questions, but sales per square foot is a key variable for retail stores. That information is available for most types of industries. If Bree looks at going that way at some point in time, we can help you look that up, Bree. What other types of businesses will complement mine and increase traffic? Again, this is kind of retail focused, although it may have some traction for storage. You know, there's a reason gas stations tend to be on corners in cities. Car lots tend to be in the same corners. Retail shopping seems to be bulked together. So people kind of coagulate because that's where people go to get stuff. They go to look at cars. They want to look at Toyota, Ford, and whatever else. So they go to the same place because all the dealerships are within a mile of one another. And fast food restaurants tend to be the same way. So food service here is really clumped around downtown and the base area, and with a key variable is downtown. So there's a reason not a lot of restaurants are opening up elsewhere. They do happen now and then because downtown is where people go to eat. How much space do I need from a business? How many parking spaces? Again, retail focused. Will I need a sales brochure, and how will I distribute? I don't know if any of you will. Frederica and I talked about putting some brochures in the condo racks that they have. There's a cost to that and a service that manages it. Her business is really kind of tourist oriented. Not completely, but a lot of it is. So that's a good way to connect with tourists is through a brochure in those racks up front. Some businesses require special zoning restrictions, and many, if not most HOAs, limit your ability to work out of your home, okay? Especially when it comes to having people visit your home to do business. It's one thing to use your garage to store some inventory, or use your home office like many of us are doing right now to do meetings and documentation and things like that. Many of the small business owners I know keep their office in their home, but they don't bring customers to their home. So if you need to have customers coming in, your HOA is probably going to have a problem with that. Personal sales calls. If you're selling your products or services to a business, you're probably going to need to make sales calls. Frederica may also want to walk around and meet all the concierges from all the condos in the spring and pass out free coupons so that they can bring their family over to do a day at the miniature golf course. Okay, so some personal calls and establishing personal relationships in this town matter. And it's good for you to get out and essentially shake hands and say hello to people, let them know you're here. If you're calling on businesses, it's almost essential, okay? None of you appear to be doing that much, but a business-to-business transaction is very much different than a business-to-consumer transaction. Consumers can be dealt with through the internet, through phone calls, through deliveries. Business-to-business usually requires some kind of relationship building to make that transaction close. What's your sales cycle? Is it a day? Is it moments? Momentarily? Does it take 6 months or longer? For example, certain software to run companies can take many, many months to convince somebody to make a big change in the way they run their company. Whereas when you walk through the grocery store, there's a reason they put the chewing gum and candy in junky magazines at the checkout. It's an impulse. The desire, the need to do that happens almost instantaneously. There is no sales cycle. It's a 2-second sales cycle. So all of what you're doing and all of what you're looking at will take some level of consideration. For example, there'll be a family discussion on whether I go to the miniature golf course or something else today. So you should think about how long it takes for people to make that decision and what you can do to shorten that time frame in your favor. Organizational issues. You got to have a business framework for any business, right? You can have the best trade skill in the world, and if you don't have a decent business structure, your business will probably fail. So let's hit on a few necessities here of running an organized legal company. First one on the list here is legal structure. Most small business owners choose to form a limited liability corporation, that's which is called an LLC, or they're sole proprietors, which is basically just them and the customer. I could go out next week and start a snowplow business. And if I didn't do anything, I'm a sole proprietor, okay? And anybody can do that. Steamboat in Colorado do not require a license to go into business. You do have to get a sales tax license if you're going to sell product. If you're going to provide a service like plowing snow, there is no sales tax. I don't think there is for miniature golf either, unless people decide to buy something, a t-shirt at your miniature golf place, okay? So if you do nothing, you're a sole proprietor. If you have a partner or spouse and you go into business with them and do nothing, you are partners. Okay, that is by law what you become if you and another person start a business together. Partnership is very complex. If you're not married to that person, it has a lot of risks because they can commit you and you can commit them without your approval. Okay, so, there's a lot of risk to a partnership. Many good friendships have been destroyed by partnerships because it wasn't defined who did what on paper. There are ways to organize a partnership so people have distinctive responsibilities. You have a business manager, you have a production person or a customer service person, whatever it is, you can define it. But just to go into things without a documented list of duties and responsibilities is very risky, okay? There's other types of organizations. An S corporation was what the business I was in Indiana. We were an S corporation, also a good structure for small companies. In an S corporation or an LLC, all the money that is made goes to the owners. So if Bree in her company makes $70,000, she has to pay taxes on $70,000. Even if she chooses to leave $20,000 in the company for growth or to buy some new computers or something like that. So if you make the money, you got to pay the taxes on the money. Okay. That's the same for an LLC and an S corporation. If there's multiple owners, they have to pay taxes on the net income based on the proportion of ownership. So if somebody owns 20%, and there's a $100,000 gain, they pay taxes on $20,000. If somebody owns 30% and there's a $100,000 gain, they pay taxes on $30,000. So these incomes flow directly through. Most larger corporations in the United States are called C as in cat corporations. They are taxed differently. That's not appropriate for any of the businesses you're going into. It's quite expensive to set up. But that's how most of corporate America builds their organizations as C corporations. There are other types too. There's not-for-profits. There's a social corporation as well that has to have a material for good role in it. I don't see a lot of those personally, but they're out there, and I can help you find some resources for them if you want. Also, this legal structure question, I have some pretty good handouts. They're in print. So I'd have to get them to you, or you'd have to stop by and pick them up, and let's wait a little bit before this COVID wave passes before I do that, because I'm not going into the office in the short term. Next up is people and responsibilities and payroll. Who's going to do your payroll? Who's going to pay you? If you have employees, you need human resource policies and procedures. There are so many laws that govern HR. The more employees you have, the more laws affect you, okay? But certain laws affect you for the first employee you have besides yourself. And you should be aware of those. I can certainly help you understand which ones you would be subject to early on. But the bigger you get, and 50 employees is a key threshold for most companies to step up to a lot of family leave issues and things like that. Below that, those laws don't affect you nearly as much. Payroll is often processed through a third party. There's companies like ADP that do it. Your local bookkeepers and accounting services do it as well. Many of the small software packages like QuickBooks have payroll modules in them too. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but it's something you cannot get wrong. There is no room for error in payroll, both for the sake of your employees as well as the huge tax penalties that come with screwing up payroll. Banking, insurance, credit cards, all key things to think about before you open up. Your bank is going to, you're going to need a checking account, maybe a savings account. Your bank also may help you set up something called merchant banking services, which is basically credit card processing. Many of the banks have partnerships with companies that handle credit card processing for them. So you may have a credit card from Alpine Bank, but Alpine Bank doesn't process credit cards, okay? They have a third party they hire to do that for them. It's just an Alpine Bank credit card. Insurance, everybody needs insurance. The basics is just liability, but if you have property, you need insurance for that. If you have employees, you may need employer insurance so you don't get sued, or you can defend yourself if you're sued. Automobile insurance, if you have cars out on the road. Trevin, that's not an uncommon problem. I had a friend of mine who has since left the business that was able to find insurance for the delivery guys for his pizza delivery business. And, I can put you in touch with him, and that's probably very similar to what you're talking about in terms of delivering equipment to people as delivering pizza to people. So it is hard to find people to do it, but I believe that you can overcome that. So let's have a follow-up discussion in a day or two on that subject.
Thanks.
Financial record keeping and taxes. Many small business people fall down on this. They just don't have the discipline to keep their records, to keep up folders by month of what their expenses are, what their income is. Once you're profitable, you have to make quarterly tax payments to the IRS. You can't wait till the end of the year. They want their money early. So it's important to be able to do estimates of profitability so you can pay your taxes quarterly as required by the IRS. You don't have to do that until you're profitable. But once you're profitable, you need to do that sort of thing. Workers' compensation, if you have one employee by excluding yourself. So once you hire your first person beyond yourself, you have to buy workers' compensation by law, okay? It's not an option. Now, if that employee is a contractor, which means they kind of work for themselves, let's say if you're building a home and you hire a crew to come out and do framing, you don't necessarily need to buy the workers' comp for the framing crew, but the guy that runs the framing crew does, okay, if he's got employees. If you hire a accountant or a lawyer or a web developer, you don't need to, and they're not employees but contractors, you don't need to buy compensation for your contractors, just for the people that are on your payroll. But it is required by law, and the state of Colorado has a preferred workers' comp carrier. So if you're a high-risk business, Trevin might be considered in that because he has drivers. He can go to Pinnacle, PINNACOL, assurance with an A, to find workers' comp insurance if you can't get it through traditional sources. Most big companies, big insurance providers sell workers' comp, but they only sell it to industries they feel safe in. Roofers, for example, have a hard time getting it, but there's a couple companies that specialize in selling workers' comp for roofers. Legal support.
Hey, Randy,
go ahead, sorry.
Can I ask a question? So
Please.
if you're getting insurance, so if any of us are getting insurance coverage for property or cars or trucks or whatever, could that, am I understanding that we could get our workman's compensation coverage through that insurance company as well, possibly?
Yes, possibly. Absolutely.
That's just something we have to check, and if not, we have to look elsewhere.
Some of the big companies like Travelers make their money on workers' comp, and I don't know if they sell car insurance in Colorado. So if you go to State Farm for your car insurance or rental insurance, homeowners, I don't know whether they're going to sell you workers' comp. There's something called a small business policy or a business owner's policy. It's a blanket coverage for all kinds of things. It puts all these things under one umbrella. It's a little cheaper that way. So if you go see your agent and you have any risk at all in your business, hi, Cindy, you might want to ask your agent about a business owner's policy. And I know all the agencies in town sell those, but they won't take high-risk clients. So, most of you are not high-risk clients. Trevin may be the only one that has a fair amount of risk involved in his business because of the delivery thing. Legal support. We all need an attorney. Some of these things you can get over LegalZoom as long as they've been vetted for the state of Colorado. Okay, so you may need sales contracts, you may need delivery contracts. If you're doing any kind of service for people, you're going to need a service contract. These contracts often say what you're going to do and how much you're going to get paid. If you're doing a storage shed, you're going to have contracts for rental. If you're doing rental, Trevin, you're going to need contracts for your customers, either to sign online or in person for pickup, to waive your liability for that equipment they're using. That's really important. Okay, so think about a lawyer. There's lots of good small business attorneys in Steamboat. They don't, attorneys are expensive. They start at $200 an hour. So using them for the minimum amount necessary is important, but everybody at some point in time needs an attorney in business. Don't sign a lease agreement for a physical space until you have an attorney review it, because that landlord will try to put all the risk in the world on your shoulders instead of them taking their fair share of that risk. Very important, and I cannot stress that enough, is super expensive, might give you a lot of anxiety seeing one, but a good attorney is worth their weight in gold and will protect you in your business interests. Define your business hours. Of course, if you're online like Bree, that could be 24/7. Communications, how are you going to keep in touch with customers? Let's see, what else have I got here? We want to step back to financial records, and there's a lot of IRS rules that are important to know. You don't necessarily need to know those, but the people that you hire need to know them. And it's important to vet the people that are doing your financial record keeping to make sure they're highly qualified. There's some really good bookkeepers in town and some that aren't so good, okay? You want to get some references, understand where they learn their accounting skills, and qualify them, okay? Some key administrative tasks here. Secure your name. You do that on the Colorado Secretary of State's website. They have a drop-down menu for small business services. You can do a name search with a couple of ideas that you're working on for your company or for your LLC, and see whether anybody else in Colorado has taken that name. Only one company in Colorado per name. Doesn't mean somebody in Wyoming or Kansas can't use that name. They go through their own Secretary of State. It has nothing to do with Colorado. All incorporations are done by state, not by the US government. The US government has nothing to do with you, where you incorporate. Almost all large national corporations are incorporated in Delaware because they're cheaper and easier to do it in. But they operate everywhere. There's many Denver-based companies that have incorporated in the state of Delaware for financial reasons, because Delaware's made it friendly, okay? But you don't need to do that in your small business. Go to the Colorado Secretary of State side and make sure one of the names you're looking at, or each of them, is available to you before you go too far down that path with that name. Define your entity. We talked about LLCs, S Corp, sole proprietorship. You can form an LLC on your own at the Secretary of State's website, print out the information page, write it up, and then go back on the site later and fill it in, okay? They're going to want to know they're going to ask you to fill out an article of incorporation, basic organizing information for your company. Cost you $25, $50. It's not very expensive. You can use your credit card for that. Or you can use an attorney and get it done right. Most attorneys will charge you $800 to $1,000 to form a company. If you have multiple owners, multiple investors in your company, you will have to use an attorney. If it's just you and a spouse, or you and a friend, you probably do not need to use an attorney, okay? The broader the ownership, the more important the attorney thing is in a new business. Secure your domain name. Don't go too far down the name path without understanding whether you can get a domain name that reflects the business. You don't want to use a name that isn't related at all to the business. You want one that really somebody can find when they Google a name or a product or service. it's going to bring up your website. Okay. It should be early up on the search, and a name is a big part of that. We all know .com's better, but it's not the only option out there. .net works too for some situations. I also want to encourage you, if you're running a very small business, to consider using your own last name. Okay, particularly contractors do that all the time in Steamboat. Okay, trade professionals do it all the time in Steamboat. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have a good reputation, take advantage of it. Finally, everybody needs an EIN number. That's an employer identification number, or federal ID number, as some people call it. And you get that at irs.gov. Really, it's an alternative to using your social security number to do business. You don't want to use your social security number any more than you have to in life. The EIN has much less baggage to it than a social security number in terms of security risk to you personally. Easy to get at irs.gov. So these are some basic administrative tasks. I don't think these are particularly important in the planning process, but you want to get all these things done, especially the name issue, fairly early, so you can develop your marketing materials, the website, and all that kind of stuff before you open, and know that this is yours to use and somebody else doesn't have it already. My old company was Star Staffing. There was 2 other Star Staffings in the United States, one in California, one in Cincinnati, Ohio. So, you know, it didn't affect us. We didn't do business we did business in Indiana, Michigan, and Illinois. So it wasn't a big deal, but you know, they had it in those states already. Questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to ask, because we did our LLC, and since we've done that, we've been getting these letters in the mail saying you have to have these posters for signs and you pay this, you know, and they look completely government legal. But from what I'm researching, we can get those online for free. We don't have to pay extra beyond the LLC fee. Is that correct?
That's correct. If you have employees, you need the posters, but you can get those posters for free.
Okay, so any of these companies that look like government legit, we just ignore those.
Well, you know, they're doing their job to sell you something, but you know, those posters are available for free.
Okay, and then just one other question. When you talked about the EIN number, so because we're buying it, it's an existing business, because we are same business, slightly different name title, we have to get a new EIN number?
I would think that you're a different corporate structure, different owners, you need a different EIN number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Randy,
So understanding.
Let's go with Trevin. He's up next. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Trevin?
I wasn't asking a question. Somebody else is.
What?
I'm good.
That was me, Joseph.
Oh, Joe, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to ask a quick question. So as I'm understanding it, a sale or a storage unit wouldn't require sales tax. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're renting that out for a period of time. That should not require sales tax based on current law. If you sell locks at your office for those things, you need to charge sales tax on the locks. Okay.
Okay.
A lot of those places also sell boxes and other kind of storage related products. Those products are taxable.
So like the pods and stuff like that would be taxable.
Not unless they're taking possession of it. No, only things they take possession of, like locks or boxes or cables or something, whatever you're selling that they take possession of and title to. If you're just renting pods, there's no possession there. They're just using it for a period of time. That is not taxable in Colorado.
Oh, cool. All right. Thank you.
Cindy.
Yeah. Hi, Randy. Sorry. I'm so glad you're doing this. Thank you. I have a question about LLC and the formation. Can an accountant do some of that work for you?
Accountant can give you advice on the tax implications, but no, they cannot do the work for you.
So you
But
really,
I suggest you talk to your accountant about the tax consequences to you and your family of the different types of organizations that are out there, because it is a big decision.
yeah, I've got that figured out. I just didn't know. I spoke to an accountant, but I think the accountant is also a lawyer, so that may be what.
Yeah, they can do that. Sure, they could. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next up is we're going to look for the next, really the balance of this thing, and I get 20 more minutes to go here on building a sales forecast, a financial model basically for your business. Let's forget about the top one, quantity sold retail, because nobody here is doing retail. Bree, do you plan on opening up a store? Bree? She might have stepped.
No. Sorry, no, I don't plan on
Okay,
opening.
then I'm going to skip this. But let's talk about service and other aspects of this. Is the idea in a revenue forecast is to understand your sales for a couple of years out, because then we add the expenses underneath that and we can figure out whether we can make any money doing this or not. For service, it's usually how many hours can you bill per week or per month? How many employees are going to perform that service? Sometimes one employee will be billed out at X rate, another will be billed out at X plus Y. And then how many hours can you actually bill? Because some work is free. We have weather issues that prevent work. We have vacations that prevent work. We have sales calls that are not billable. We have to do administrative work in the office that's not billable, okay? So we try to look at how much time you got, what do you want to make? All of you, I want you to think about your targeted income and how much you need to bill per month, less expenses to get that income, okay? So I don't know what that is. If your goal is 70,000 a year, that is what, 1,500 a week in profit. And if your expenses are 50% of your sales, then you need to bill out 2,500 to 3,000 a week in billables. So it's a mathematical equation, and the equation starts with service provided times some sort of fee times some sort of period of time. The spreadsheets that I sent you are based on monthly estimates, okay? But you may start out thinking about weekly before you transfer those to a monthly model. But each of you, think about, Trevin, how many pieces of equipment can you rent per day, per week, per month? And what are you going to rent them for? And then you do a spreadsheet based on all these pieces of equipment you think you'll have in inventory, how often you will rent them, what people will pay for them, and then you build an estimate based on a list of potential products in your rental pool for a month, and then for a year, and then if you need to borrow money or get anybody to help you for 2 or 3 years, okay? So that is the essence of a revenue forecast, is what I'm going to sell for how much, how many times over a period of time I can sell it. Could be your billable hours if you're a service person in retail, or if you're selling product, it's almost always what I bought the inventory for plus my markup. So if Bree finds some sweaters that she wants to resell, for example, and she finds those sweaters at $60 a piece, she may choose to sell them for 100, 120 a piece. How many of those sweaters will she sell in a period of time? And if she has 30, 50, 80 products, she may choose to group those sweaters, all sweaters together, and all slacks together, all blouses together, all jewelry together, and then do some estimates. Like, I'm going to sell 60 units of this. The average price is that I pay is $50, and the average price I sell is $100. Okay. The whole goal is to get some kind of reasonable estimate of what your sales is going to be for a period of time. if you need outside money, a loan or anything like that, you're going to want to do this forecast of sales for 2 years plus, maybe 3. If you're looking for outside investors, and none of you are, you're going to have to do this for 5 years. Okay. It's important to be able to project where your sales are going to be. All the tech companies, all these hotshot startups you see are looking out at least 5 years or longer in their projections to tell people where they see their curve going up and to the right with sales over the years. Understand, in a mountain town, we have adjustments for seasonality. I don't know what that adjustment is for a storage shed. Is there less activity in the winter or more? I don't have any idea. They're all based on a spreadsheet and summations, and the one I sent you already has the embedded formulas, mathematical formulas in the spreadsheet. So all I got to do is put numbers in those slots. It'll do all the vertical and horizontal math for you. And you can also extend and contract the size of the fields or the text, the place where you put text, the descriptive text in it too. So play with those spreadsheets. Feel free to give me a call, but they are the building block of a good business. Comes on a reasonable estimate of assumptions about what you're going to sell, who you're going to sell it to, how many, how often, and then what you paid for that, okay? Quantity times price is how a revenue forecast is built. If Joe has 30 storage sheds in his facility, he's not going to sell all those right away. He may get 6 the first month, 4 the second month, and it may take a year or 2 for him to fill that place up. So these forecasts also have to be reasonable, because they will not, your business rarely goes from 0 to 100. Usually goes from 0 to 20, 0 and 20 to 30, or 20 to 40, 40 to 60. It takes a while to build a business up. So don't be overly optimistic, but be confident in building your revenue forecast. Then, once we have a ballpark estimate about revenue, we're going to look at transferring that to the second spreadsheet I sent you, which is profit and loss. First, we put our sales on there. Then we add a cost of goods sold. Bree has a cost of goods sold. She buys stuff from other people and resells it. So the amount of money she pays for the materials and inventory she buys is a cost of goods sold. Trevin also, he's going to buy sporting good equipment. He has a cost of goods sold. Joe, his storage shed, has no cost of goods sold. He has facility costs, property taxes, all kinds of expenses, but he doesn't buy anything to resell it. He just has a physical space he's renting out. And Frederica is doing mostly counseling, so she does not have a cost of goods sold for that part of her business either. Okay. This will give you a gross profit, or what we call a gross margin. And then we deduct, it says add, but the word should be deduct operating and administrative expenses. Below that line, and hopefully you have a positive bottom line. That's called a profit. Okay. Revenue less expenses is either a profit or a loss. A loss is not uncommon for a new business, but obviously we're striving for a profit. We can play with these spreadsheets until we're comfortable with them. You change pricing assumptions, you can change sales assumptions, you can recalculate and reevaluate many, many times until you feel like, this is as close as I'm going to get to the real thing. It is not the real thing. It is a forecast. But it does help you define what it's going to require to make a living doing this business. Some people start a business and they make a profit, but they don't make a living. You need to make a living on this, right? All right. Various types of operating expenses are the kind of things most of us have for our home as well. Property expenses, rent or a mortgage or property taxes, labor and payroll taxes. If you have employees, you should assume 15% for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, payroll tax. Okay, so If you're paying somebody 15 bucks an hour, add 15% on the top of that for payroll taxes. That's for direct employees, not for contractors. Marketing, sales expenses, brochures, web hosting fees, search engine optimization fees, whatever they are, there's going to be some marketing expenses. Insurance, vehicle related expenses, and I think it's 57.5 cents per mile for whatever kind of vehicle you drive, which can be a really good deal if you got a Prius, not so good if you got a big heavy duty pickup truck. Okay. Supplies, all kinds of supplies, service fees, utilities, taxes, phones, other stuff. Everybody's got unique expenses that come with their business. Joe would have expensive security fees because he's got to protect the goods in his storage units. This is what a profit and loss statement looks like. It's a simple example, but understand this example. It's important. You got sales, less in many cases, some type of cost of goods sold for a gross profit or a gross margin. Then you have, there's only list 5 here, but generally there's 20, 30, 40 different expense categories for a net profit. And then after that net profit comes some level of taxes. Is there any question on how that works? Okay. Everybody should set up a profit and loss statement like this. The only way you measure the success of your business is in happy customers and a profit at the bottom line that allows you to take some of that money out, if not all of it, and give it to yourself. Okay. Most entrepreneurs use this after-tax profit, which is $6 in this case, to pay themselves a draw, and that draw is their living. You may put in some salary up here, a minimal one, but most of your living is going to be the profit your business generates at the end of the year or end of the quarter, whatever. But at some point, you're going to determine, I've made some money, I'm going to take some or all of that out and put it into my household bank account to pay bills and live my life. Right? Shake your heads. There you go. Right on. That's what we're trying to do, is cover your bills and make a little bit of money for your lifestyle. And also think about the future. Okay. Setting up a 401k or a small business retirement account is a prudent thing you should do once you get this thing profitable. The future comes up upon you very quickly. Ask Cindy and I, we'll tell you about it. So startup costs, operating expenses, this slide should have been a couple ahead of this. Balance sheet, let me keep going here. Startup costs are one-time costs, expenses necessary to get the business up and running. You also have a spreadsheet on startup costs. It's kind of the stuff you need to be able to invest in before you start making any sales. Okay. Common items are deposits, prepaid expenses, and prepaid inventory. Okay. If you're starting a new business, it's a good chance the utility company is going to want a month's payment in advance. If you're renting an office or a retail space, they're going to want a rental payment in advance. Sometimes if you're starting a store or any kind of business, they're going to want they're not going to sell you that inventory on trade credit. They're going to want to get paid in advance. Insurance often wants their money in advance, if not always. So there are some things you have to pay up front. Sometimes you need stuff to run your business, equipment, computers, a vehicle, real estate and fixtures. That stuff usually comes before you open the business. You may need some marketing tools, signs, brochures, website development, pre-opening ads, all those things a certain amount of these things can be required in advance of opening, okay? So think about what you need to get this thing up and running and what's going to cost. Does every expense need to be specific or detailed? No, you can ballpark some of these things, but the big ones, equipment and vehicles, you should be pretty specific about what you want. Don't just throw in $20,000 for a used truck. Tell them which truck you want to get and look at the Kelley Blue Book value of that truck. I want you to be familiar with what a balance sheet is. I'm not going to spend much time on this because we're winding down here for time, but it's a measurement at one point in time of what your business has. What are your assets? What are all the stuff you have? Cash, inventory, fixtures in your store, vehicles, and what do you owe? Payables you owe people, short-term debt, maybe any taxes you owe the government, a mortgage on your property, a bank loan, and then what did you invest in up front? Equity, and what profit have you retained each year as you have run this business? So the top line is assets equals liabilities and owner's equity. That is the basis for all accounting and a formula that every business needs to come upon and reconcile. That's the right word I want to say, okay? So, you know, we would spend days and a lot of anxiety in my company trying to get this number to work out each month. We did it monthly. You're required with your taxes to do this too, so it's got to be at least once a year. But I would suggest you do it monthly, if not quarterly. So you know what your assets are, what your liabilities are. And within that, there's ways to monitor those numbers so you know if one's going sideways or weird, you can adjust and adapt your business activities. This is what a balance sheet looks like without the numbers. Again, you have assets over here, liabilities over here, equity here, and this asset number always equals the total of liabilities and equity, okay? I did a workshop with Vic last month on this basic stuff, and I'll do one again in the spring, but I'm always willing to provide some one-on-one counseling in this area too, if you want to get some basics of this. The ability to build decent financial statements is a key part of running a business. Skip that. You know, I don't know how you are with your personal financials at home, but you probably should do business and take it seriously. Some discipline, good record keeping, set aside a time each week to do this record keeping, not just leave it to be when you're good and ready. Separate your business and personal checking accounts. Get a business account, perhaps get a business credit card, and don't use your personal credit cards for business expenses. Of course, balance your checkbook, reconcile your credit card statement, record your cash payments so they go into the business and not your groceries, okay? And then one that many people fail to do is get their invoices out quickly and follow up on past due. Several of you will take credit card payments. In fact, probably 3 of the 4 of you, I don't know about Cindy, but several of the others will take, Trevin, Joe, and Bree will probably take credit cards or PayPal for theirs, so that won't be an issue as distributing invoices. But if you do get invoices, have to send invoices out, and it's really common in many fields still. You're going to need to make sure they don't age on you too quickly. Be realistic in your budgeting. Understand that startup expenses are not necessarily ongoing expenses. A few of them, like insurance, will continue, but most of them are one time, and they're also often the basis for what you want to borrow from a bank or a family member is your startup expense costs. Remember, there's fixed costs and variable costs. Variable costs are labor. You can lay somebody off at the end of the season, like many of us get here in the ski town. The other ones are fixed. If you sign a lease, you're going to pay that lease whether you're making any money or not. So it's a contract. So try to have as many variable expenses as possible and avoid fixed if you can. Note that we have seasonality here, and that should be in your forecasts. You should have some extra money, contingency for rainy days or if things turn weird. I don't think anybody could account for this weirdness that's currently going on. And many people are burning through their contingencies quickly. But I'm hoping you start your businesses kind of after this fades away. And I'm hoping that's in the spring. For now, major consideration has to be health and safety of your customers in everything you do. If your business is opening while this pandemic's still on, needs to be one of the first things on all your promotional materials. We're taking care of you. It's part of the value decision we all have when we go to the store. Okay. Can you buy supplies for safety? Do you need to enter somebody's home? And if you can, how can you mitigate risk to the homeowner? Is it presented as a careful thought process in your business, in your marketing material, your website, etc.? I'm going to talk about lending, and I will be done in 5 minutes, I promise you, and then we're done here for the night. Banks in Steamboat are predominantly lending to small businesses because we don't have big companies here. Okay, we have small businesses here. And those big companies that are here are not borrowing money through local banks. They're going to money center banks, Denver banks, Chicago banks, New York banks. Okay, so we have a very good banking community for small businesses, but it doesn't mean you'll get a loan. Considerations for banking. We're going to talk quickly about sources of lending for small business and then the personal impacts of lending. 5 C's of credit are capacity, and that's your ability to repay the loan. Do you have the cash flow? Are your forecasts favorable? Do you show enough sales over expenses to cover the loan payment that is going to be you're signing the contract for? Do you have any collateral for the loan? They will not lend you any money unless there's an asset behind it. Could be a truck, could be real estate, could be fixtures, and it could be some, high-end equipment like lathes, something like that. Okay, real estate works really well. Your character is your credit score. Okay, do you have good credit? Capital is how much you have in the bank behind this. Is there any money in the bank behind this? And conditions are the market and the economy, and right now that's pretty shaky in a lot of fields. People that will tend to lend you money are family, friends, and fools. Okay, most of us get our money from family members and personal associates, and ourselves. Bankers are a good option, and if the bank turns you down, there is a number of microlenders in the state of Colorado that would be happy to lend to you if you have a decent credit and a decent plan. So there's good options out there if the bank turns you down. Okay, and I have literature and links to all their websites if you'd like to poke around and you want to go that way. The interest rates are a little higher, but they're nothing like a credit card. And then for high-risk businesses, venture capitalists and angel investors are an option. Those are typical for small businesses. You probably, if you borrow money, will probably have to sign a personal guarantee, fill out a personal financial statement similar to one you would do for a mortgage. And understand this will affect your family budget and the amount of time you have to spend with your family. Businesses take time to get off the ground. And you can't assume that it'll be a 40-hour-a-week job, at least the first couple of years. So again, thanks for engaging tonight. I hope there was some value in this to you. Feel free to reach out and call me in a day or two or in a week or two or whenever you want to continue the discussion, move the next step down the line. Vic and I are probably going to put up a marketing program in the middle of December. And after a 1-month break in January, I expect we'll do some more programming in the winter and spring too. Thanks. Any final questions you have? Cindy, you're muted. Still muted, sorry.
There we go.
There you go.
So I don't want to keep everybody if everybody has to go, but I had a question about home office expenses and I suppose that's a tax question, not a small business guy's
It
question.
is, but a few years back, they simplified it and it's a pretty straightforward formula. You get a certain percentage of this to do per month. And if you drop me a note, I will send you a link to that formula. Okay, remind me though, because I'll forget tomorrow.
Okay, no, thank you for this. This was awesome.
Sure.
Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, back at you. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Right
Randy.
on.
Yeah, thanks for
All right,
coming.
Bill, nice to see you. Take care. Have a good week. Thank you, Vic. God bless
Yeah,
you.
no problem. We will also post a link with this video if you want to review it on the Chamber website. So Feel free if you want to reach, if you email me, vic@steamboatchamber.com, I can send you that link to it if you want to replay.
Cool.
Perfect.
Any moves, be safe.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a great evening.
Bye, thanks. Bye now.
Thank you. Appreciate it.